So let's talk about gaslighting. At this point, everybody in America has definitely experienced gaslighting in the political arena. But I'm not going to talk about gaslighting as it relates to politics today. I'm going to talk about gaslighting as it relates to somebody that you've been in a relationship with. Now, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. Could be a non-romantic relationship, but for this purposes, I'm going to use a romantic relationship. So first, let's give a little history on gaslighting. So the term actually originated back in the early 1900s with a play that was written. It was a British play, and then the play was actually converted into a movie, and the movie was called Gaslight, and then the movie was remade again. And so I'm going to give you the rundown of the movie version because it's been slightly changed a little bit. But I remember when I watched the movie Gaslight for the first time, and this was only a couple years ago. And for me, I'd already gone through my gaslight experience with somebody, and had come out on the other side of it. So when I sat down to watch this movie, it became very triggering to me because of how subtle most gaslighting is. So gaslighting in romantic relationships are not like what we've dealt with in the political arena, where it's just like in your face and you're like, are you serious? So the movie Gaslight basically centered around, in the very beginning, there was a woman. She was a famous opera singer, and she died mysteriously. There was a burglary in her home. She died. They didn't catch the thief. And about 20 years later, what happens is her niece gets married in a whirlwind romance to this guy, and she moves back to London, and they moved into her former aunt's house that had remained vacant the whole time. And they had moved, all this stuff, all of her aunt's stuff had been moved up to the attic. Now, don't forget, back in that time period, women didn't work, right? So, she was home. She's just supposed to be the wife, the good wife. Well, so what happens is at one point, her husband gets a job, but his job's kind of at night. So he leaves, goes to his job, whatever. And what always happens is she starts noticing certain things, like things will be missing where she puts something on a dresser and then later it's not there anymore. And then she asks the staff, or she'll ask her husband, do you know where this is? And nobody knows where it is. And so then she can't find it. And then, her husband starts accusing her of, what's the word? Being flighty, right? Or not knowing where you put your stuff. And in the whole premise of the movie, where it starts off where he's very doting on her, and he's very sweet and very loving and very caring, right? And that's always how the gaslight starts. It starts from a place of trust, and it starts from a place of, caring and I love you, and it never starts off in your face, ever, all right? Now, as time goes on, there are other little things that start happening. For example, there was a watch, I think it was, that, he couldn't find. And then, he accuses her of taking the watch, in which she's like, no, it's not. And then he searches her bag and is like, it's in your bag. And she's like, I don't understand how it got there. Right? And so then he starts getting a little mean. And then things start happening where she starts hearing sounds in the attic above her, in which case he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You must be hearing things, right? So gaslighting is all about a psychological manipulation of somebody else's mind. And it starts from a place of trust where they make things very subtle, and over time they build it to where they are intentionally trying to make you seem like you are crazy. like your mind is off, like you are forgetful, like you are saying things that about previous conversations, and the other person is like, that's not what was said. That's not what I said. That's not what we agreed upon. You don't remember it. Now, most of the time, the defensiveness, at least in the beginning, is very passive. So it'll be things like, no, honey, that's not what we talked about. You know, and they'll get like really sad, like, man, you know, your mind just, it's not recalling things correctly. And they seem very concerned about you, concerned about your mental health, your mental well-being, that your brain is not remembering things. And then they'll accuse you maybe of other things, like, let's say maybe you had like a glass of wine, and then it becomes where, well, you know, I think your drinking is impairing you. I think it's messing with your ability to remember things, right? So there's these little subtle digs that'll start happening. And it's always that kind of like, oh, I'm so sad and upset that something's wrong with your brain, right? So now over the course of the movie, then the other thing that starts happening is, or actually kind of happens through the movie is, so back in early 1900s, they didn't have electricity, and they were still in the rich houses. They actually had gas that was flowing in, and they used gas lanterns to light the inside of their home once it got dark. Okay, this is where the term gaslight. And what happens is you would turn something in the lantern up to turn the gas higher to make it brighter, or turn it down to make it more dim. Well, what was happening, right, was the gas lights in the house were dimming at certain points. And then after a short period of time, they would come back to their normal lighting. And, you know, the woman was noticing this, like, I don't understand what's going on, you know, and she started asking the staff, you know, did you turn the lights down? And the staff's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't touch the lights. Right? So now she's starting to be like, am I seeing things? Right? And she's starting to get to a place where she feels she can't trust her own mind. So she tells her husband, and of course her husband then leans right into the whole, you know, you must be imagining things, right? So we're starting to do the distrust of your mind and your brain, what you're seeing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what's perceived. And what happens is the woman starts to get, you know, really insecure about herself, and she starts to get really concerned about her own mind. Oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. I can't remember these things. I must be seeing things. I must be imagining things. You know, do I need medicine? You know, what's going on? And, you know, at that point, then, you know, he's starting to be like, maybe you need to see a doctor. You know, there's something wrong. Maybe you need to be medicated, right? So in the end, I'm just going to tell you the plot, because I mean, 99% of you are never going to watch that movie. So it's a black and white movie. So in the end, what actually happens is there is a detective that was involved in the movie, and he kind of, you know, he was never able to catch the original killer of her aunt. And so when she comes back into town, the niece, and moves in, you know, he's kind of a little suspicious, right? And he had met, you know, the niece a few times, met the husband, and he kind of felt like there was something off. There was just something off about the situation. A man using his intuition. And what happens is he actually follows the man one night when the man leaves to go to his job. And what he finds is that the man is going out the front door, going down the street, around the corner, and then he's taking the back alley, and he's going up the fire escape ladder to the unit next to him, right? Going all the way up, crossing over, and going into the attic of their own home. Now, what's happening is when he goes in the attic, so his footsteps up in the attic are what she's been hearing. And the gas lights dimming are because he's turning the gas lights the lights in the attic on so that he can search through the aunt's stuff, okay? And so the gas lights in the lower level of the house start dimming, right? So that's why the woman is seeing him dim. And then when he leaves, right, the gas lights go back to full strength, no big deal. Now, what he was actually looking for, okay, was like jewelry. There was a certain kind of jewelry he was searching for. He wanted to take, sell it, whatever. Well, it turns out that the husband, okay, actually was the one who murdered, okay, his wife's aunt. And when he murdered his wife's aunt, he was trying to actually take a lot of her jewelry. At the time, there was something about like she rebuked him for something, and he got really angry about it. He was a pianist. He got really angry about it, and it didn't work out. So he ends up marrying the niece intentionally, but the niece never knew any of this stuff, right? She just thought this man was very much in love with her, and she was in love with him, and he was doting, etc. And so the whole time he's trying to, just find the jewels. That's what he's trying to do, and he's trying to drive his wife crazy. Now, in the plot, the idea was if he could have her committed, then he becomes power attorney for her. He can put her in a psychiatric unit, and then he can go through all the stuff that he wants and find the jewels. He can then sell the jewels, make money. He can even divorce his wife, whatever, okay? And he's off scot-free. So he had this whole elaborate plan. So the whole time, this woman literally starts to become very insecure. She starts to not trust herself. She starts to think that she's going mad and crazy. And part of it was because he all started from a place of trust and trying to appear as if he is sincerely concerned about her. Oh my gosh. Honey, it really hurts me to see you this way. It hurts me that your mind is it's just not very strong. It just doesn't, really, you can't trust your own mind here. You're seeing things, you're imagining things. That's not what we said. That's not what was agreed upon. So, I went through this in my own life, and it was super scary because you literally do sit there and start to think that you are losing your mind. And when I went through it, I was on some opioid medication for my back pain, and it was at that point where I'm like, I didn't even really know about the term gaslighting or how it happened, because this was years ago. And then there were a couple things that started really cluing me up. And one of them was my whole pill bottle one day. And actually, so this is actually what happened. So I got a job. I ended up getting off the opioids because I got on some other medication that was not narcotic related at all. And the thing was, my ex knew that the opioids kind of made my head a little fuzzy, kind of gave me a little bit of brain fog. And so, I delve into, oh my God, it's got to be the medication, that's causing me to go crazy. And what happened was I started to have an idea that something was up. Something was off. Because I was like, I don't really think I'm that crazy. And I went off the medication, right? And my head cleared up. But I didn't tell him I went off the medication. And then I was able to start really realizing that he was lying. So, for example, one day, my pain meds, I noticed, and this is like, I hadn't taken them like, I don't know, like 5 days or something. And I noticed that the entire bottle was empty. And I'd had like a lot in there. And the pill bottle itself was still in the medicine cabinet, but there were no pills in it. So I confronted him on this. And when I confronted him, he then tried to make a statement that, well, it must have been me. I must have been the one to have done something because he didn't touch them. And at that point, That's when they start getting defensive. When you actually start pointing the finger back at them and you're like, no, 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 no. I'm sure that it was not me and it could have only been you. That's when they get really defensive, right? And so then he tried to say that it must have been our child. So let me get this straight. My 15-month-old baby somehow got a step stool, drug it over into the bathroom, managed to climb up on the counter, then decided to open the medicine cabinet, found that pill bottle, ended up getting the child-proof cap off, then somehow magically did something with all of the pills, then put the cap back on the bottle, put it back in the medicine cabinet, closed the door, got back down, moved a stool away, and didn't knock over anything. Right, a 15-month-old child. No fucking way. And I knew right then and there he was fucking with me. So at that point, then I started really paying attention to our conversations. And I started realizing he was, when he was saying like, that didn't happen, I was like, no, 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 I remember that conversation clearly. And I remember exactly what you said. And I remember exactly what I said. And so then he started getting more defensive and more kind of like angry. And just like in the movie, in the end, when she starts being like, no, I know this didn't happen. And he gets really angry and defensive. And he actually starts getting abusive towards her in the movie. And, it gets to the point where, it's very scary. And when you finally catch somebody realizing that they've been gaslighting you, and you realize that they have been intentionally, psychologically trying to manipulate your mind in their favor for whatever their payoff is, whatever they want to get out of it, whatever they want to control, okay, then they do. Now, another thing about people that gaslight in romantic relationships is this. They try to isolate you away from the people that you are naturally close to so that they can control the narrative of everything. And so that you don't have anywhere to go to have these other conversations. So, for example, isolating you away from your friends so you aren't talking to your friends saying, we had this conversation, it seems really weird, and then your friends reaffirm your version, okay? The whole idea is for you to be in a situation where you can't have anybody validate your version. Therefore, it's a distrust of your version. And that's part of the psychological manipulation, is the isolation factor, okay? Because they need to perceive that their version is the truth, all right? So once you get to that point, though, where you realize this motherfucker is gaslighting my ass, then all trust is broken. All trust is broken. And you can't come back from that. Like, you can't. How do you ever establish or reestablish a bond of trust with somebody that intentionally, psychologically manipulated you? Because now, moving forward, you are constantly going to be in a state of always being on guard, always being in a kind of a, kind of in that survival instinct, right? Where you're not just going through life, you're like actively paying attention to everything they say. And that's where you become hyper vigilant. Like, I am going to listen to every conversation. I'm going to remember this right now, exactly how it is. And you get in this hyper vigilant state where everything becomes, am I going to have to validate this? Am I going to have to remember this, to point this out? Am I going to have some sort of proof to then prove to him or her that what's happened in my version of events and not the one that he's trying to claim or she is trying to claim? So that's the tricky thing. And once you get to a point where you realize you've been gaslit, that's it. the relationship is either over or you are going to crumble, because there's no coming back from it. There's no coming back from it. And if you find yourself in that situation, then my advice to you is get out. Get out. Because you are dealing with some form of a covert narcissist in your life. And the covert narcissist is always going to try to control the narrative of you in order to have a better narrative that they want to play out. So I hope this kind of gives you a little idea of what gaslighting is, how it works, what goes into it, how you feel, and understand that if you are a victim of gaslighting, get out, because you are going to have to, rebuild your mind. And there is absolutely no way that you can ever reestablish a bond of trust with that other person. So hopefully you haven't been gaslit in a romantic relationship, but those are the things to look for. So if you like my stuff, subscribe to my channel. If you need help with any type of spiritual life coaching, limiting beliefs, especially tied to trauma, check out my website, talktopallas.com. Reach out to me, see how I can help you. Have a great day, guys.